Before we start the show, just a word from our sponsor, Undeniable Press. For all your screen printing needs, located in the Corktown district of Detroit, Michigan. If you ever need any t-shirts or any other little promo accessories, posters, or whatnot printed up for you, go to Undeniable Press. They're located, once again, in the Corktown district of Detroit, Michigan, and you can reach them at facebook.com/undeniablepressdetroit. And those same guys who do Undeniable Press also have a clothing line called 20 by 20 Apparel. It's very much wrestling themed, all sorts of nostalgic themes in regards to the history of wrestling. And you can go check out their clothing line at 20x20apparel.com. That's the number 20x, the number 20apparel.com. Now let's start the show.
Fresh is the word.
I'm Jim Duggan, got long wood for plenty hoes. I keep it fresher than fresh, but you already know. You suckers bummy, I'm money, I got a ton of flows. My weed loud like a motherfucking thunder roll. Your shit quiet like you ballin' on a budget though. We see your kicks and we laugh and yellin' what are those. You see me shining like a suit on puffy. You know my grindin' shit is too strong, buddy. That's why the dude call money. I be stuntin' like it's nothing at all. Cause it's nothing to me, it's probably something to y'all. Trying to smoke like me, then come and fuck with your dog. Got a closet full of kicks, you can't cop it them all. And I'm fresher than the freshest, you can tell it's in my essence. Bitch, you see the way I'm rapping, yes I do this shit to death. Until I'm running out of breath, or tell somebody cut a check. But either way you know it's fresh, and either way you know it's fresh. Fresh, we fresh. Fresh, 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 goddammit, we fresh. Fresh, fresh, goddammit, we so damn fresh.
Welcome to the Fresh is the Word podcast, the podcast about music, pro wrestling, and MMA. I'm your host, K Fresh. We have a great show for you, like always. Before we get into the show, just definitely want to remind you how you can support the podcast. You can always go to freshasthepodcast.com and share any of the links on the website on any of your social media. That would help. And also, you can click on the link that says support the podcast, and there's a PayPal link that you can donate to. And there's also a Amazon link that you can use anytime you want to make some purchases on Amazon. It doesn't change anything on your end, but it does throw a little commission our way. You can also follow Fresh is the Word on Instagram and Twitter at Fresh is the Word 1. That's Fresh is the Word, then the number 1. And on Facebook at facebook.com/Fresh is the Podcast. Give us a like on there and share anything you want on Facebook. That'd be great. You can also subscribe to Fresh is the Word on a slew of platforms right now. Mixcloud, SoundCloud, TuneIn, iTunes, Stitcher. All right, that's all of them. I should all write them down. But anyways, you can go to any of those platforms and just search Fresh is the Word, and it'll come up. You can subscribe to it. That's great. And if you want to, give us a rating on there, preferably 5 stars. Leave a comment, and that would be totally, totally awesome. Okay, let's get to the show for today. I am joined by a couple of people. Spike Slawson, the lead singer of the really fun cover band Me First and the Gimme Gimmies, along with Audra Angeli-Morse. She was the promoter of Incredibly Strange Wrestling that started back in 1995 in San Francisco, went all the way into the early to mid 2000s. Incredibly Strange Wrestling was a wrestling promotion that mixed the lucha libre style of wrestling with all these crazy, controversial gimmicks, along with having live bands at the shows. And they also toured with festivals like Warped Tour, Deconstruction Tour, Lollapalooza, and a slew of others. So we get into talking about all the craziness that went on with this promotion. And there's a really poignant part of this interview where Spike and Audra sort of talk about like how like San Francisco like transformed into this sort of tech hub, and how people were coming to San Francisco to quote-unquote save San Francisco, but it really didn't need to be saved. So we kind of get into the nuts and bolts of sort of like the cultural economics of San Francisco. It is really, really fascinating. And then, like always, afterwards, I'll be joined by my co-host V Styles, and we talk about what's going on in the world of pro wrestling and MMA. So let's get to the interview with Spike and Audra. When you kind of look back to Incredibly Strange Wrestling, it was such a cool idea. It was wrestling based off lucha libre, and then infused all these different sort of music, rock bands of all types. It's kind of a crazy thing. How did that all get started?
Well, it started with my friend Brett and I, and we were both into music in San Francisco, and we both were into comic books. And I learned about lucha libre from Love and Rockets comic books, basically.
Okay.
And that's kind of what made me seek it out. And I would make trips down to, like Tijuana and stuff because we lived in California, and I saw the masks and I collected them. And then I met this guy who did the same thing, and we were literally the only two people in San Francisco, I'm pretty sure. And we had the idea. We also knew Johnny Legend. I don't know if you're familiar with Johnny Legend.
Yeah.
But we knew Johnny Legend from music because I used to book this club and I booked his band. And so we contacted him and had the idea. I was booking a couple clubs at the time in the city. He worked as security in the city, and we thought, let's do our own wrestling show just for fun. And we contacted Johnny to have his band play and maybe bring up some, if he knew some guys who are wrestlers. And the very first show, I convinced the owner of the club to let me do this after-hours wrestling with bands. It was $2. It started at 2 a.m., and we ended up bringing in a ton of people. We wrestled, and we didn't even know what we were doing. We made a wrestling ring out of this oak wood staging and packing blanket, and then we basically just beat the shit out of each other, and we all woke up the next day with huge bruises and hematomas, and we're like, that was the best thing ever. We have to do this again.
That's awesome. After that happened, what was sort of the result of that? What happened, the weeks or months after that?
It was actually kind of crazy. Everybody really loved it, and they were kind of crazy for it. And then the owner of the club and the other booker, I was her assistant, they were both like, we should do this. We should make an actual show. And we made an actual show of it, a couple weeks later at the Transmission Theater, and we're having regular hours, and people got to actually drink and hang out and stuff. And then through the booking agent, who I worked for, and some friend of hers, I don't remember who it was, that came to the show just because they came to see this weird thing that was going on. They got us on Lollapalooza that year in 1995.
Okay.
And within a month or so of starting this show, we did the whole West Coast leg of Lollapalooza in 1995.
Great. Sort of like the music aspect of this show, how did you go about getting bands to play this weird wrestling show? And especially you have a band like the Gimmes who seem like were like one of the main attractions on a regular basis for this. How did you go about selecting these bands to be a part of the show?
I literally, because I had been booking a couple clubs and stuff, and had been working in music, and music was so important to me. I just picked the bands that I really liked and that I thought were fun, because the wrestling, and I also so the way that we did the show was that we'd start with an opening band, and then there'd be a 30-minute set of wrestling, and then there'd be another band, and then another set of wrestling, and then the headliner. So I also, besides what I liked, I had to pick bands that kept the momentum going, The worst thing was if you put a band on that was kind of mellow after that first set of wrestling when everyone was all hyped up, the band would just be destroyed. So it was a combo of all the music that we liked, because we had the Bomboras and the Mummies and, Mike Watt and the Dwarves and all these bands that we listened to and we were friends with. And that's how we started, was we just convinced our friends' bands, including the Gimmes, will you please play this crazy show that we're doing? We promise that it'll be fun. We'll get you drunk. It'll be a party. And that's how we got them to do it. And then as the show got bigger and bigger, then bands started chasing me down to try and get on the show, kind of a thing. Yeah, and the Gimmes were one of many crazy bands that decided to get in on the action.
Hey, Spike, what was your thoughts about when you first got involved playing these shows?
That's the first I had ever heard of lucha libre wrestling. I didn't know about it. I had read Love and Rockets comic books before,
yeah,
but I didn't know anything about it or why they wore masks or anything like that. And then, I was still helping her set up the ring back before the Gimmes were anything. And, it was fun. Of course we wanted to play it. It was San Francisco street theater. As well as being like an homage to Mexican wrestling, it was like a weird form of San Francisco street theater that it got topical. They would always it was really provocative. It was really good at pushing people's buttons, especially here in the city in San Francisco, which at that time was a different city to be living in. It was a lot more fun.
And Spike used to come to the shows too, long before he ever played them.
Yeah.
Right.
He had a crush on one of the wrestlers.
Yeah. That's awesome. Spike, you mentioned how San Francisco was around that time when it all started. Can I talk about that more? How did these shows sort of fit into the culture of San Francisco, and how was San Francisco just as a whole in that time?
It was kind of a wilder city. Like, people still, it's tough to describe without bringing up beatnik or hippie culture, but it wasn't. It didn't it brought waves of people.
Yeah.
Throughout, it's brought waves of people since the gold rush, and then waves of gay people in the 60s and 70s, waves of hippies and beatniks, and then waves of punks and musicians and artists and stuff, all bringing kind of a different sort of character to the city. And more recently, it brought waves of basic suburban people, which is why it's changed so much recently. And it no matter how you feel about hippies, they definitely brought sort of a wild energy to the city.
Yeah.
And recently, the latest swarm has just brought prohibitive prices and this weird sort of suburban middle class mediocrity to it.
San Francisco. I grew up in San Francisco. I'm born and raised here,
yeah.
And it's always been this city. Anything went. You know what I mean? Anything goes, and it was all about not just acceptance, because not everything was accepted, but it wasn't this PC bullshit. And it was okay, I'm not into what you're into, but you're allowed to do it. And it's, if it's crazy, it's San Francisco. And the new wave is very basic, as Spike put it. And they've got, it's
easily offended.
They're easily offended. And I think that Incredibly Strange Wrestling, if I started doing ISW again now in San Francisco, it gained enough popularity that I'm sure that it would be still a successful show. But if I had to start it again here, I'm not sure that it would have ever gotten where it did get to, because the people here now, we tackled a lot of topical stuff and a lot of really fiery things, and people laughed at it because they had a sense of humor and they got it, that it was parody. And now people are just so worried about, gender-neutral bathrooms and fragrance-free club shows and not offending anyone, and it being a safe space, and instead of just having a good time. Right. And they've brought these, people complain about sound now on the street and their neighbors, in San Francisco when that would just never happen before. Like they want it quiet, but they moved to a city, if that makes sense.
Right. With the Gimme Gimmies, this is a band that's, predominantly does covers and has members that from all these other bands like NoFX, and then you have Chris, who is with the Foo Fighters now, and they are all these musicians from different walks of life. You said, Spike, that even when you first started coming to these shows, you still weren't a part of this band, but like the Gimmies are kind of like sort of like another form of that traveling circus, how wrestling is. Was there any influence being a part of this show that you took into this Gimme Gimme project?
Yeah. A lot of the bands and the music that she curated for these events were bands that I had not heard previously. And certainly, I mean, even apart from the wrestling, which was this sort of amazing, controversial, provocative, like street theater, there were also bands like the Mummies who, during their musical sets, in between the wrestling bouts, they had their own sense of theater and visual presentation, and that changed my outlook on what live music should be, certainly. Because I grew up in Pittsburgh, where I think a lot of people felt all you had to do was dress up like you were in The Exploited, and then sort of play a set while you were staring down at your shoes, and that you were kind of like, then that was supposed to be live entertainment. And now I don't think that way anymore.
Right. A lot of, like you were saying before, a lot of the themes that were tackled at Incredibly Strange, covered a lot of issues, stuff that was controversial. A lot of the gimmicks were really outlandish. What were some of the ones that stick out in your mind? What were some of the themes that really stuck out in your mind that you were able to tackle during those times?
God, we did so. I mean, if it happened in the news, when we were doing shows on a weekly basis at that point in time, and then like when we did tours, we did the Warped Tour in 2001. We did the entire tour, and anything that came up that day in the news, we'd find a way to put it into the set that afternoon.
They had Scientologists, wrestlers.
We had a boy band called 69 Degrees that were Scientologists, and so that was kind of crazy. I had on 52 Warped Tour shows, each and every day, no matter where we were, a couple of representatives from the local Church of Scientology came out and tried to find me. They knew exactly who I was and what I looked like, and they asked everybody where they could find me. And then occasionally they would corner me and try and either get me to stop parodying the church or try and make me become a member. And it's all because before I left, they used the Dianetics.
Yeah.
So they would usually start, something would start, but usually the match would start by them taking a copy of Dianetics and hitting their opponent over the head with it. And then they would end up tearing the book. And so, when we did one show every month or something, I would just go to Barnes and Nobles and buy a copy. But any bookstore only ever had one copy. When we were going out on tour, I needed, 40 copies, and nobody had that. So I had to go and order them from the local Church of Scientology. And I went down there to go and pick them up. And luckily I brought a friend with me because it was the creepiest thing ever. We came in, they made us take our shoes off to walk in the door, and then took them from us and then put us in a room and kept us there for over an hour and wanted to do all this crazy shit, wanted to know everything about the show. And I totally was like, oh, this is a theater performance thing. I didn't say anything about wrestling or anything. And I was like, oh, we're huge fans of Tom Cruise, and he's a part of our show, and he's a Scientologist. So, and I made up this whole bullshit lie to get the hell out of there. And then they followed me, and then they saw it, because ISW was getting so much press at the time. They figured it out, and then these creepy people came to every single show. It was nuts. I still get weird newsletter things from them every once in a while, and through that, their L. Ron Hubbard's grandson contacted me because he was really into wrestling, and he told me the craziest stories about Scientology. He and his sister were kidnapped from their mother by the church. And then I don't even know if he's still around anymore, but at that time, he was couch surfing and running from the church. And he was a part of our wrestling show. He did a couple of things with us, and then had to move on because they literally would show up at his friends' houses as soon as they figured out where he was to come find him, and he'd have to move to the next couch.
That's crazy, man. That's crazy, man.
Super crazy. I think that the Scientologist and the Oi Boy were two of my favorite characters because they really I don't know, everything about my personality and everything about wrestling is to push people's buttons and upset them. And those two really got it going on. I mean, the Oi Boy, we upset everybody. It was great. And he was the Oi Boy was a Nazi skinhead who we always pitted him against like a Mexican wrestler, and he almost always lost, and the crowd would go nuts, and he always carried around a copy of Mein Kampf, which he would end up getting beaten up with his own copy of Mein Kampf. But there were places like we were in Boise, Idaho, and the skinheads there really believed it and went crazy, and security had to they were trying to get in the ring, and I was announcing that day too, and I had to stop the show and go, "Hey, skinheads, you do know that this is wrestling, right? It's not for real."
Kayfabe. All right. Kayfabe was alive and well that day.
Exactly.
During all that time was what was sort of, when it comes to topics and things that you want to tackle, where was the line? Was there any times when you felt like you might have crossed the line a little bit, or was there any ideas that you had to shoot down before you even did them?
There was probably a couple offhand. I don't remember, but we really pushed some crazy lines. We did. We pushed every line. I mean, that was the point. I mean, I think that is what, art and performance art and music and all these things, my biggest problem now with so much of the new stuff that's out there is everybody's so worried, and people are trying to censor art all the time now.
Right.
And art is art, no matter what, whether it's a painting or a song or some stage performance, it's supposed to evoke emotion, whether you're happy, sad, angry, whatever it is. And if it doesn't evoke any emotion in the viewer, then you're not doing it right. Then it's no good. And people, the idea was to get people fired up, get them into the show, get them to be a part of it, get them to root for one of the characters, to hate the other one. You know what I mean? Right. So anything with people emotionally engaged, and our storylines. I mean, with the Oi Boy, we did these. I made a movie, and we did these commercials for the movie. And he did a laundry detergent commercial. It was white powder laundry detergent. I mean, we pushed every button, and it was. I would still do it. I still don't hold back because you're not supposed to. You're supposed to. I mean, especially now with our president, people should be doing. My biggest problem with Kathy Griffin is that she apologized.
Right. Shit. Hell yeah.
Don't apologize.
I mean, fucking Ted Nugent did the same thing during the Obama thing, and he got invited to the Oval Office. Shit.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Don't apologize for your art ever.
Right. So Spike, during this, whole time that you're witnessing this crazy wrestling event going on, what were some of your best memories, playing these shows?
Just the energy of the crowd. By the time You got to play a live set of music. You know, like, if it's just music, then you kind of got to work a lot harder, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like when you get people that emotionally engaged, even if they understand the irony, even if they're aware of the irony, even like the you know, they still manage to engage emotionally with what's going on, and they still manage to want one character to win and one to lose. So they get really worked up, and then you just get to go play a set of music in front of them rather than having to do that work yourself. That may sound lazy, but it's actually, you know, it brought the show up. It brought these people to this sort of fever pitch before you even got in front of them, which was great.
Right.
That's my best memory of it. And then just sort of watching it, and then now in hindsight, I think of that San Francisco, and I get kind of nostalgic for it. Because I still, you know, I don't want to leave here. It's a beautiful city. But it would be really nice if that San Francisco came back with, like, you know, almost affordable rent, people that could take a joke. Like, it seems like that whole cross-section of people who understood how to have unself-conscious fun and why it was good, they all moved to Los Angeles over the last, like, 10 or 15 years. And then we're kind of left with these sort of, like, basic techie types, and then all these other people that seem to believe that, like they reserve the right to be offended by literally everything they hear. And it doesn't make for, like, to me, I forget what the quote is, like, good art is supposed to agitate the comfortable and comfort the agitated. I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember the exact quote.
Right.
But what it seems like is out on the coast and by the big bodies of water where all the liberal lives, and I happen to be left of center too, like, politically speaking, but that's not what I mean. It seems like those are the sort of comfortable people now. And they don't like being agitated any more than like, you know, than the right-wing squares did back in the 60s and 70s.
Right.
Which I think is all the more important to fuck with them now.
Right.
The new San Franciscans, they're big expressing themselves is like what pattern yoga pants they're going to put on to wow their Bikram class that day.
Right.
I'm not even kidding. Like, they think it's amazing. I just...
Well, and then the other thing is that now, and this is a little bit like maybe more of a darker take on what's happened ever since, is that you see a lot of people that you used to see at shows. Like, things have been really stratified economically now. So, like, you see a lot of the people that you used to see at all kinds of different shows, or that you used to just see on the street. And even if you didn't know them, you knew they were kind of a compatriot, like, you know, that they listened to the same type of music, that they were into underground music and culture. You see those people on the street now. Like, some of them, you see them living rough.
Yeah.
And maybe they're not people that you used to know or that you used to see, but they're those same type of person. They're the same type, and they can't hack it here anymore.
Right. The
only people that can hack it economically are necessarily mediocre, middle-class people with suburban sensibilities.
Or people that were locked in already.
Yeah, or people with rent control. And everybody else, it seems like, is, you know, they're on the streets. Like, it's crazy how things have been stratified here. And so then that's like this weird, almost subconscious fire that's lit under your ass. Like, man, I better get a fourth job and start dealing coke on the side. So you don't see a lot of the people who, during that time period, say 20 years ago, would have been creating things or experimenting. A lot of those people now are in the service industry or, you know, writing code.
Right. Yeah, like because I'm here in Detroit, and over the past few years, they've done this whole revitalization of downtown. We're getting new stadiums. It looks all nice.
I just saw corridor. We were just there, not like a couple months ago or a month ago even.
Right.
And I grew up going to Detroit back in the 70s. My grandmother lived at or near Sussex and 6 Mile. I don't remember exactly where it was.
Okay.
But I couldn't believe it. Like right over there by like the Magic Stick.
Yeah.
Like they think that $800 watches are going to save the Cavs corridor. And you know what the horrible thing is they may be right, depending on like your definition of saving.
Right, exactly. We're getting a lot of that, what you saw here in Detroit downtown, but we don't know what's going to do for the rest of the city, which is still, struggling. It's still the people that have been here for generations. And then how do those people fit into the city as sort of that revitalization or whatever they're doing to quote unquote save the city as that expands past that downtown area? There's so many unknowns right now with the city of Detroit and how this will affect the people that have already been here, that, it's kind of a crazy and scary thing when it comes to the city and the culture.
Yeah. I grew up in Pittsburgh, which was also had some similar issues as Detroit. And it's kind of the same thing. Like, I hate to say it, because it's really tempting to say that Pittsburgh has turned into the city that I would have liked to have grown up in. Because it's hip now.
Yeah.
There's good food. There's like live music venues. There's like cheap spaces for people to experiment.
People aren't beating up scrawny little musicians anymore like you.
But like the human cost for it to get to that point, like nobody talks about the foreclosures that got it there, or very few people are talking about the foreclosures that got it there. And I think with Detroit, it's even more of a dire prospect because they can't administer to the geographic area that encompasses Detroit, right?
Right.
Like they can't afford to do it. So the only answers that they can talk about are monstrous. Even if they're the only practically tenable solutions, they're monstrous. And like I don't think there's room for the people that really suffered through it. And I don't think a lot of people, like, I know it. Like I know if I were to move into East Oakland, like, okay, so like if the situation were reversed, if I had been living in East Oakland for 3 generations and suffering through and struggling through what that neighborhood was like for those generations, or my parents or grandparents had, I wouldn't want to see my face coming in because I know what it means. But I think a lot of people are not self-aware enough to understand, like, hey man, like you're the front lines, so just be careful and like try to be an ally to the people who have lived here through. Because all I ever hear people talking about is about the, like, especially in San Francisco, is about the artists that struggled in the Mission District. Like, fuck them, man. You know what I mean? Like, what about the people who had been there for generations before that?
Right.
I don't know. It's tough.
It doesn't matter either what city. I mean, obviously Detroit and Pittsburgh have had their issues and financial issues and all this, but San Francisco never had that. San Francisco has never been struggling. It's never been a poor city. It's always done well because it's such a huge, it's a big port city and it's also a big tourist city.
Yes.
But still, these people that have moved here, I hear it all the time. They have this attitude of, oh, well, we're saving San Francisco. And I'm like, from what? Like, it was fine. The hell are you saving it from? And
from unselfconscious fun.
Yeah, exactly. and my family grew up in this neighborhood on the east side of town that was mixed industrial and residential. And it's always been a really cool neighborhood. I love it because it's right by the water and there's like all these old shipyards, but still really cool old architecture and stuff too. And it was this sort of untapped area. And now it has become the most up-and-coming, most expensive, most coveted neighborhood in all of San Francisco. And it's just these assholes that are taking over it. And I've actually had people tell me that I should walk around my neighborhood and see what's going on now, not knowing that my family has been here since just after the 1906 earthquake. And I know exactly what's going on in this neighborhood, and I hate it. And it's like they act like they're saving this neighborhood because they're going to put in the new Warriors Stadium. I'm like, you're ruining the neighborhood by putting in the new Warriors Stadium.
Right, yeah. There's always that savior complex that people have in this country about going into a... I mean, that's something that Detroit's always kind of had also here and there. You know, we've had our times when Detroit's been completely ignored. But then you had times when way back, just probably maybe 100 years, I forget the actual date, is when they tore up the Black Bottom neighborhood to put in a freeway. And they just destroyed a whole deep, enriched, cultured black neighborhood just to put in an expressway. And the part of the expressway that they tore up really isn't that express of a way to be funny about it. It's a little part that actually just connects you to the downtown. So yeah, there's always these, you know, times when you're going through these eras where you have these people that come in and have these savior complexes.
Yeah, they're saving us. They're saving us from having open space. It's all going to be apartments and lofts.
I think it's that, like, I think there's like a new baby boom, a more recent baby boom, and it's what happened in the suburbs. Is that people, I guess they called it white flight, you know, back in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah. It's reversed.
They didn't want to pay for city problems, urban problems. That's a euphemism, but they didn't want to pay for quote unquote urban problems, so they left the big cities and raised families and started breeding out in these suburbs. And I think sometime over the last generation or two, the people out in the suburbs realized that the suburbs suck. So they did all this breeding, and all these people that were bred realized that their surroundings were horrible, unsustainable. Like, you had to have a car. You know what I mean? Like if people, when people get drug habits out in the suburbs, it's like a one ticket. Right. Whereas in the city, there are all these different alternatives and all these, you know, all these things that can distract you from your bad habits, and you can sort of create new ones. And so people came into the city, and there's just not enough room for them. Like there are too many of them. It's like an invasion. Like, I guess in Detroit, it would be like Oakland County, you know?
Yeah.
So I guess you could have a really nice life there if you are a certain kind of person, but most people aren't like that. Like, we have the internet now, so we can see how great the city is, or how much quote-unquote potential there is in Detroit. So they move in, and I think a lot of them, you know, like, ignorance is no excuse, but I think a lot of them are ignorant. I don't think the people on the developing and real estate end are, but I think a lot of the people that are moving into the city are. They're like, man, like, this is the one place where I'm going to be around other people, where I can interact, like, in an urban environment, and, man, I only got to pay $500 down on a house, you know?
Right.
And they don't have the frame of reference to even think about the people that were foreclosed on to create that kind of situation for them.
Yeah, I always kind of like think about when those sort of people, they almost have a romantic idea of the city. Like, they only think about that side of things. They romanticize, oh, I'm being in the city and I'm going to be so cultural and everything, and don't really, you know, realize the deeper meaning about a lot of the shit.
They, like, here and in Los Angeles, because since the San Franciscans moved down to Los Angeles, now Los Angeles is prohibitively expensive.
It's also way cooler now.
And fancy. Yeah, it's way cooler than it used to be. And, no, for sure. But it seems like when the people move in, to the Mission, where it's hard to find a one-bedroom apartment under $5,000 in what used to be the Mexican barrio, where artists and musicians would live at some personal risk to do their shit and not have to worry about rents so much, so they could concentrate and reflect and focus on what they were driven by mainly, which is their art.
Yeah.
Now it seems as though, like, the people that move in, they almost want somebody taking a shit on the street or shooting up or fighting as like window dressing, and it's as if they'll pay, extra for it. You know what I mean? Like.
Yeah.
I'll pay $5,000 a month for this shitty one-bedroom apartment in this loft that they slapped up on top of some landfill 6 months ago. But I'll pay a little extra if you can include a guy sleeping on the street, and I could, if you could include the stench of urine, I'll pay extra for that too. Like, it almost seems like that. Like, people sort of expect. It seems as though they expect less. And I don't know if they expected more. If they actually tried to fix these problems, then that's like the last nail in the coffin.
Right.
So I guess I should thank goodness for small favors, that they're not, trying to completely change these neighborhoods that they move into. But at the same time, it's like they're divorcing the whole idea, the whole notion of like cost and as it relates to value. Like, it's gone now. And they don't just destroy it for themselves, because if they had just destroyed it for themselves, like,
who cares?
Yeah, I'd get a bowl of popcorn and watch them get hustled, until they're in a barrel with suspenders. But they just destroy it for everybody else too. Everybody that lives in these cities.
Right. Yeah.
But San Francisco at that time, years and years ago, 20 years ago, it wasn't like that. There was a spirit to it, and it wasn't just a San Francisco. It wasn't a native spirit. It was a spirit that people brought. Like, people knew they wanted to come here, and then they knew they wanted to be changed by the city of San Francisco.
And now they want to come here and change it.
Yeah,
according to their.
Like, this was their destination in mind. They weren't just like wandering around and wound up here. This is where they wanted to come because of what was going on here. Like, it was one of, like, back in the 70s and 80s, it was one of the best punk scenes in the country. Even if it didn't have as many good bands as, like, say, Southern California did, it had a lot of great bands, some of the most seminal punk bands in the world.
It had a ton of great clubs that all the bands came to play.
Exactly. All those LA bands, this was the first place that they came to play.
It had a great scene. But it also had a great gay scene. It had a great art scene. It's always been a food city. Like, people came here because it was going on.
Right. That was always the sort of what people thought about San Francisco, and for a while that's the reason why they went to it. But then they started bringing their own ideals into it. They're like, I want to go there, but I still want to be me.
Yeah. I want to live in this really popular, thriving neighborhood where there's a bunch of clubs and bars and restaurants, and then I'm going to move in, and then I'm going to complain about the sound and all the people. This actually happened. In the club district of San Francisco, 11th Street, they turned an old warehouse into some of the first lofts in San Francisco, some of the first newly developed live-work lofts, and people actually, and this was like, it was 2 blocks of nothing but clubs and bars. So on the weekend nights, it was it would look like an intersection in Tokyo where you see all the people walking on top of each other, basically.
Yes.
It was like that every weekend night, because everyone just came to this one district, and they would go club hopping in all these different clubs in this 2-block radius. And then this building, these people moved in and started complaining about sound. There were too many people on the street. There were cigarette butts. There was trash on a Saturday night. I'm like, why in the hell would you move in next to a fire department if you didn't like the sound of fire alarms?
Right.
And they got really expensive attorneys and started going after these clubs and they shut the clubs down one by one. And they didn't like say, oh, you have to be shut down. They started with these noise ordinances. So every club started with having to seal up their windows. And then it was like prohibitively expensive soundproofing that, you know, the corporate club could afford, but the little mom and pop club that was a rock and roll club, they couldn't afford to soundproof their entire place, you know, pull out walls and insulate them and then buy expensive sound baffles. So they just closed down because they couldn't do it anymore because they could only stay open a certain amount of nights a week. They had to have the bands be quiet. They had to start booking different kinds of music. I mean, and then, you know, security, you had to have extra security to make sure people didn't drop their cigarette butts and that they didn't walk over to this side of the street. And a small club can't afford all that extra,
right.
You know. And so, and they did. I mean, the neighborhood still hasn't come back from it.
Right, and that's how you get people out. You start, you know, creating rules that the smaller people, the people that you want out, won't be able to abide by or afford.
Yeah. The only club that survived and luckily helped the other clubs was there's a place called Slim's, and I don't know if you're familiar with it, but Boz Skaggs is one of the owners, and it's sort of semi-corporate. You know, it's got corporate money in it and stuff, but it's still a local club that, you know, we know the bookers and some of the owners, and they still walk around on the street and hang out and go to community meetings and stuff.
Right.
And they were the only ones that had the money, and it strapped them too because they weren't, you know, Live Nation or anything. But they kept an attorney on retainer that kept fighting, and that's the only reason that the street has survived at all, and that there are clubs that are coming back to it now because of them. But who can afford to keep an attorney on retainer 24 hours a day? I can't.
Right. At the you know, at the height of doing Incredibly Strange Wrestling, you know, how big did this thing get? How big did this company get, you know, in regard to attendance? You know, is there a way you were able to quantify how big this company got?
Yeah, well, in the Wrestling Federation world, your Wrestling Federation size is determined by attendance. And because we not only did these big shows in San Francisco, but we were touring all the time, and we did a lot of festival tours and stuff too, even though we were not bringing in, you know, 30,000 people that day because, you know, Rancid was headlining, but that attendance still went on our tab, as it were. From 2001 to 2003 or 4, it was like 2000 to 2004, I think. We were the second largest wrestling federation in the United States, second only to the WWF, WWE, which is insane. It's crazy. I did a bunch of interviews. They're like, do you know? Somebody came to me one day in an interview, this wrestling magazine, and said, do you know that you have surpassed the WCW and you are now the second largest wrestling federation in the United States? I was like, excuse me, what? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, oh my God, it's insane. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy too because, I mean, so much has changed since then. Vince McMahon once said, he was asked about Incredibly Strange Wrestling, and he did not have the nicest things to say about the Lucha Libre guys. And he said he didn't need any of that Mexican wrestling shit, and talked a bunch of shit about it and was pretty goddamn racist about it. And then magically he acquired Rey Mysterio Jr. And then all of a sudden, and he really picked up on it. And he didn't even know what the hell it was. He didn't care about Lucha Libre. And I know that I sound like I'm floating my own boat, but I'm sorry, but Vince McMahon would not have done that if it wasn't for us. Because nobody was doing Lucha Libre. Southern California, they were doing it like swap meets and stuff.
Right.
But it was all, you know, Mexican and Latin American culture. And I mean, I went to shows all the time down there and in Mexico, and you never even saw white faces. And for the longest time, you know, we would go down to Mexico to buy all of our merch to sell, like masks and dolls and stuff. And we were the only, and I'm not that white, I'm brown, but my partner, Brett, was this tall, skinny white guy. And like, he was the only white face in the crowd, always. And then like trying to teach people around here about it, like, you know, a lot of people are like, what the hell is this? But yeah, the WCW and WWF didn't want to touch it. until it was already, popular and it was something. And Rey Mysterio used to wrestle for these smaller federations that came through, and we would always, our wrestling ring, the wrestling ring that I still own was the original Roy Shire ring. So it was the old Cow Palace ring, and it was the Northern California ring. And WWF even used it for a lot of their early stuff because it was the ring. And everybody has wrestled in that ring. George the Animal, Hulk Hogan, Classy Freddie Blassie, like all of these people. And we would rent it out for these shows, and like in San Jose, like some small arena kind of thing. And Rey Mysterio was on a couple of the shows, and we got to know him. And at that time, he was kind of worried. He's like, thought that he could only get to a certain level in the United States, and then bam, he got picked up. But he had to take his fucking mask off too, which we won't even get into how I'm upset about that. But.
Right, because Incredibly Strange started in 95, but it wasn't until 96, 97, 98 until WCW and ECW brought in the Mexican guys into their company. And while
WWE didn't bring them in until 2001.
Yeah, Rey Mysterio wasn't even in there until after he had left WCW, until after WCW folded and got bought out.
Absolutely. So it
was probably wasn't even until 2002 or 2003 when Rey Mysterio went in there. But it was just ECW and WCW did have the lucha libre wrestlers, but then you had those times when, like you mentioned, Rey Mysterio, and that was during the whole what's his name who's booking the shows, Vince Russo era of WCW, when they made Rey Mysterio take off his mask, and that was like, what the fuck, dude?
I went crazy. I was so pissed off. It's the opposite of what it's about. You know what I mean? It's the thing that makes lucha libre so cool. And I did a bunch of work. We did a lot of benefits and stuff too. We went to Mexico. I trained in Mexico to wrestle and stuff. And the thing that made, and the reason that I was so into it and that it brought me in when I really learned about lucha libre, like I said, it started with Love and Rockets, and the Hernandez brothers knew because they grew up with it. It's their culture, but it's a part of their culture. But I didn't, and I had to learn about it. But I learned that these are real-life superheroes. And who the hell wants to know the true identity of their superheroes?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And, there's, I don't know if you're familiar with Super Badio, but he, grew up in a really shitty neighborhood. He never takes his mask off to this day. He does he's raised millions of dollars for, Mexico City and it's in education and all sorts of different things. And he does all of it in his mask, in his costume. He leads parades. He does all of this stuff. And he is looked up to by all of these people and children. And it's so cool. Why the hell would you unmask your superhero?
Right. It's always been a part of their culture.
You don't get to go back to being masked. The rules are you don't get to go back to being masked after you've been unmasked. So who the fuck are you? Some American white guy who just changed the rules of this culture's sport. I have so many problems with it.
Right.
Oh my God, it makes me crazy, in case you couldn't tell.
Definitely. No, I understand, but it's very disheartening. You're like, that's part of their culture, and you just don't get it.
Rey Mysterio Jr. once asked me out on a date, and I almost went out with him even though he was shorter than me. But then I saw him after the show at a Burger King, and he didn't have his mask on. I was like, I don't think I'm going to go out with him anymore.
That's funny. And during that time also, you were the only woman that was a promoter of wrestling. And wrestling has, for ages, been a boys' network. How was that like?
Oh, it was so hard. I cannot lie.
You never did it in music, too.
Yeah, I mean, I did. I've been doing it in music, too, which has always been a boys' club.
Right.
But wrestling was worse. I mean, it was, I think back on it now, and it was crazy. I mean, there was some crazy shit. I'm very, very lucky to have had a bunch of men around me that I worked with that had a lot of respect for women and that fought for me too, because they went out of their way. I know that it would have been so much easier to get ISW off the ground, just in the sense if I was a guy, because they just hated that a woman was doing this. I did the same things that anybody else was doing, but I was a bitch, and
Right.
it was tough. It was very, very tough.
Right.
I cannot lie. And sometimes I just I don't know, Spike can attest to it. I just came in and I was, a wreck. I was in tears and it's hard to bring me to tears. It's no easy task. I'm just lucky that I had a group of guys around me that fought for me and helped me. But it was a constant fight. It sucked.
Yeah, that was I could understand.
And it still happens. It still happens in music all the time too.
Oh yeah.
That was never intended to be.
I get it all the time, even managing the Gimmes. Like, they just want to deal with a dude, you know what I mean? They want to deal with another guy. And somehow that guy, all the time, I'll do something that every step of the way will be questioned. But if a guy did it, they just let it go. They never questioned it. I watched it happen all the time.
Oh, definitely. A lot of the people that I deal with in the music industry, a lot of the managers, publicists, whatnot, they're all women, and they're all they're all the best people that I've ever worked with. And the shit that they tell me that they have to deal with, and then some of the people, the other women that they work with, the stories, it's like, it's crazy. And I'm like, holy shit, like, why are, there's so many, it's such a boys network and this male fragility with all these guys. I'm like, you don't need to be dicks like this.
Yeah, I had one really, really, really horrible thing almost happen to me. Again, I was saved by the men that I hung out with, but I upset by winning a match and being also the promoter. And all I did was my match was more like the crowd went crazier for me than they did for these guys that were sort of local guys. And I went back to the dressing room and I waited until everybody was done getting changed because I was the only girl. And when it cleared out, I went back there to get changed, and a bunch of guys came after me, like 8-on-1, when I was standing there half naked, and nothing happened because I was screaming and yelling, and my guys came and protected me. But shit like that happened a lot. That was the worst of it. But they just couldn't even handle a girl getting more, glory in a match, even, let alone being the boss.
That's crazy, man. That's crazy.
Yeah, but you were fighting a culture that you knew was like that, and that was, maybe not supposed to be like that, but was naturally kind of like that.
Right.
I think I have a much bigger problem with it in so-called punk culture. You know, if you want to call it that, because
punk culture claims to be so open and, and forward thinking and all this, but they're just the same as, they're men.
Yeah, these sort of 70s and 80s rock and roll attitudes have kind of come in and metastasized. I think when it got popular, or maybe when it got popular again,
right.
And I think I don't think it was ever intended to be that way. When you were LA to me is, I don't know. It's always the best nonfiction is from that town for some reason to me, and punk culture, LA punk culture is no exception, and it kind of sums up what I believe happens in a lot of different scenes across the country and across the world. Is that when the bros, and I love Black Flag, but when all those bros from the South Bay started coming up to the punk shows in LA, which was up until that point kind of a weird artsy scene, Exene Cervenka and John Doe talk about it, and I guess they wrote a song about it too, how they made all of the weirdo artsy originator people want to go home and not want to be involved anymore.
Right.
The bros.
Yeah, all the bros, they kind of they were there just to sort of get like this pent up suburban aggression out, you know. Whereas before that, it was just like, and I guess that's like a necessary release valve. But man, I don't know, go play some fucking football or something, or go surfing. Like I think for like artists, there's something, or artsy milquetoast types. That's like a necessary release valve for them too. And then they're left with nothing. But I think that's why people moved laterally and stopped identifying specifically with punk culture per se, and started inventing new things.
Right. Yeah, like the sort of the bro culture, like kind of comes in all like sort of aspects of music and sort of ruins it when there's like this sort of deviation of why these other people were here originally, and you have these other people that really don't get any of it and just want to like get their aggression out or get drunk and get laid, but not in any sort of respectful manner. Like I see it also in the electronic music scene now over the past 5-10 years, where it went from this soup like just a really deep culture of just of house music and techno and whatnot, and now you just have all these people that don't give a fuck about the origins of it. They just want to do their drugs and woohoo, whatever,
Go find somebody, get laid, and leave.
Right.
But and I see it. I book a couple clubs here in San Francisco, and I book all sorts of different kinds of music. I don't just book one kind, and I see I've seen it a million times over, and I've done a lot of corporate rock stuff, and it's not my favorite, and I could make a lot more money and have benefits and all that, but I choose to still work in these smaller, 300 to 500 capacity clubs, because it still seems, at least for me, at that level, you have less of the bro quotient, and you still have people that are vested in whatever scene it is that support the scene. They don't just come, buy a ticket, have a drink, try and get laid and leave. They actually support it even when they're not there.
Right.
And try to nurture it, and whatever kind of music it is. And when it becomes overwhelmed by the bro scene of whatever it is, the bro people, like they just take from whatever scene. They don't give at all.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I've seen that way too often. So many different types of scenes, and it's crazy, and it pushes out the people that really give a fuck about things. And like you say, you kind of move laterally to something else, but it just isn't like that same vibe that you originally had.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's weird how it happens on different levels too. In San Francisco, there are a lot of gay women's clubs or gay women's events in the city where they don't let men, and they're not just talking about straight men, they're talking about gay men too, because the second you let one or two of them in, it's theirs.
Right.
They think it's theirs. And it's a weird that they're not bros, but they're males, and they feel entitled to take over whatever space they see. And you see it, like fragility was the right way to put it, man. That Gamergate thing, to me, was a real eye-opener, man. Like, I know that men feel threatened by female agency, but I didn't know to, what level, and, just how spiteful and hateful, the thoughts that were going around their minds were. The language that they were able to use when they knew they weren't accountable, when they weren't looking face-to-face with a woman and they were just doing it on the internet.
Yeah.
But they knew that it would affect their intended target, They just knew that they wouldn't have to, be held accountable for it. I never knew, that, or maybe I just never was willing to see up until that point just how hateful and virulent, those naked male emotions were. And it's all so obviously, especially when you take it in the aggregate, it's so obviously fragility. and it's so obvious that they feel threatened. Like, who's the fucking real snowflakes, man? That's what I would like to know.
Right.
Please, I'd like to see you give birth, and then we'll talk about which one of us is more fragile.
Right, definitely, man, definitely. It's great, yeah. As we sort of wind down this this interview, what are both of you guys doing these days? What's sort of your future plans for the Gimme Gimmies, and Audra, what are you doing these days?
We're traveling as much as we can. It's a weird thing. At the same time that we're trying to sell tickets and shirts and get people excited and have them let off steam at our shows, at least I'm trying to do my part to speak to the bro culture as it exists out in our crowds, and maybe try to temper it with a little bit of respect and inclusiveness.
Right.
I'm just trying to do my small part, and then just mainly just try to entertain people, because if you do it with style rather than aggression and loudness, that brings the girls up to the front, man. And then the girls coming up to the front brings the boys. And when it's co-ed, it's just a lot more fun. I see a lot of girls in the pit too, which is good and fun and gratifying.
Right.
You also see a girl standing at the front of the stage with bouncing boobies, which makes it way better.
Oh, definitely.
Want to see a bunch of dudes rocking out at the front of your stage, or a bunch of cute girls with boobs as they jump and sing your songs? Come on.
That's the best.
I'm kind of all over the place. I'm managing the Gimmies, so I'm putting them to work this year. I've been busy wrangling these boys and traveling a ton with them. And I used to do this weekly club called Stinky's Peep Show here in San Francisco.
Okay.
And I am kind of bringing that back. I've been doing it over the last year or so, and in small doses here and there. Like we had a tent.
San Francisco trash culture.
Yeah, San Francisco trash culture. It was a Stinky's Peep Show, home of the large and lovely Go-Go Girls. But it was music and like funny peep shows, like raunchy, still pushing the envelope. You saw boobs, but you're not meant to like pull it out and wax one out. If you did that, you'd actually have some girl probably beat you up.
Right.
So we did it at the Burger Boogaloo last year. We had a tent and did a bunch of shows, and then I brought it back in a festival form last year, which I'm not doing this year because I'm on tour too much, but I'm going to bring it back again next year, and then I'm going to try and do it more regularly, maybe monthly kind of thing, and then just a lot of touring. Spike also has got UConn and the Revolts, and so I have to manage all that, and they're working on records too, and then tours will follow. So trying to keep busy, trying to pay my rent in San Francisco, and trying to...
No, but fuck that. Like trying to
keep it going. San Francisco is not dead. San Francisco is not what it used to be, but it's still better than... I travel all the time, and I still choose to live here because it still does have a great scene, and it still does support live music. Maybe it's a little different than it used to be, but it supports the arts. It supports live music. It's still a cultural town.
And you can't count, like, that's the difference. The difference today in these cities and I guess like New York too, and these other places that have just been sort of invaded by people with money to burn, is that like you can't depend on somebody else to be the fire. You know what I mean? Like to provide your entertainment or your style or like your inspiration. Like you have to be the fire, Like that's the difference now, because there's nobody, there may not be anybody else left. You hope that there is. Like I would hope that not everybody that was around during that wonderful time in San Francisco that I moved to and felt a part of, I hope they haven't all moved as far as Los Angeles and I'm pretty sure they haven't. Like, some of them moved to Oakland, some of them moved, like, to Marin County, some of them moved, and they all, like...
And some of them are still right here.
And some of them are still right here.
We still fill club shows, cool, fun shows
and when you do
with
events,
people all the time.
When you do events that remind people of that time, it's crazy the faces that you see that you haven't seen in years. They come out of the woodwork still, and that's gratifying. And, yeah, that's what you're doing. I mean, and then again, you got to pay the rent, too, but...
Right.
I don't know. It's a challenge. You know, like, I think it's always been like this in the world. You know what I mean? Like it's tempting to think that, like, these cities being overrun with these people with way too much disposable income is a new thing, but I think it's a cycle in a much bigger timeline. And these are challenges that people in the past have faced and that we have to face now.
And I still own a wrestling ring, so who knows?
Yeah.
Anything can happen.
Anything can happen. Anything can happen. Where can people online go to check out the more information on the band or any other projects that you're involved in?
We got Facebooks.
The Gimmes have Facebook and Instagram. Fat Records has always got, upcoming stuff for them, whether it's records or tours. I have Stinky's Alfresco is an Instagram page. Somebody else is running a Stinky's Facebook. My old original partner, he's been keeping it going. I don't even care. It's funny that it still exists. San Francisco, they keep track of us. They do.
Yeah.
But
San Francisco keeps track of us. And all the craziness.
yeah, it's not over yet.
Definitely. Well,
Hey,
Rents are plateauing.
No, rents are actually declining. Like, the bubble is starting to hiss a little bit. There's a hissing sound. So, I don't know. Maybe people will come back. People are moving back into Manhattan now. Like
It's
that's
cheaper to live in Manhattan now than it is in Brooklyn. To live in Brooklyn.
yeah, that's crazy.
Right? That's nuts.
That's nuts.
That's a long way to go before it's actually affordable. I don't know if it's ever going to get to that point, but I don't know. If the tech bubble leaks a little bit, like I suspect it will, then maybe there'll be room for other influences and collaborators and contributors. That's what we're up to.
Definitely.
Hoping and praying, and then doing what little we can.
Definitely. Well, it's been good talking with you two, Audra and Spike. Thanks for taking the time out to chat with me. It's been a very, very great discussion about things in regards to San Francisco and with the wrestling company, Incredibly Strange Wrestling and its history. Yeah. Definitely, thank you for taking the time out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope you can edit out all the political bullshit that we once I get started, it's hard to put the cork back in.
What's the name of that chicken place we went to when we were just in Detroit?
The chicken place?
The place that the runner took you to.
No, it's someplace out on 7 Mile Road that I forget the name of, man, because Miss EV's was closed.
Talking to you just made me crave that chicken.
Oh, well, if it's on 7 Mile, then it should be straight, man. It should be some good shit.
It really is.
Man. It was.
It was good.
So I'm glad you got a little taste of Detroit the last time you were here.
Yeah, it always gives me mixed feelings, man. Like I left at one point and hadn't been back because my grandmother lived there, so I went there on holidays, and then I hadn't gone back until I want to say the first time the Swingin' Utters or the Gimme Gimmies played out there, and it was this 10 or 15 year period, and it was incredible what had happened to that city, man.
Right.
And it's still and then it's really hard for me to reconcile watches and record plants. And I don't want to talk shit about the record plants because it seems obvious that the proprietors have real love for that town.
Yeah.
And they want to bring and interest back into that town. It's just really hard to reconcile the new Cass corridor with all the burnt out fucking buildings when you go out further afield into the city, man. It's a really weird time for that city. But I think there's more hope for that city because you can move around, man. It's not locked in by water the way San Francisco is. So once they move people out of certain areas, just like with the punk scene, things just move laterally, man.
Right, definitely. I think that could happen here.
I hope so.
All right.
Now let the man go.
Yeah, sorry about that, man.
All right, it's been good chatting with you too. Good luck with everything, and have a good weekend.
Thank you. You too.
All right, bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, so that was my interview with Spike and Audra. It was super cool to talk with them. There's a lot of great stories, a lot of insight into what was going on during sort of that transformation of San Francisco from this really cool artist community to kind of like what it is now, to where, like they said, like the artists really can't think about being artists because they have to have like multiple jobs. And a lot of artists have left to go to other places like Los Angeles or whoever else, maybe even here in Detroit, But what can I say, man? That shit's happening everywhere. And now joining me for the Fresh is the Word discussion segment of the show. And like always, I'm here with my co-host, pro wrestling and MMA connoisseur, Detroit hip-hop artist, and proud Marine, V Styles. What up, though?
Yo, what up, dog? What's good, Kelly? You all right?
Oh, man, I'm good. Man.
All right, that's what's up.
Man, like, what was up, this past weekend, UFC, we had Max Holloway beat Jose Aldo and become the champ, undisputed champ now. Yeah, we both were pulling for Holloway. It looked like those first two rounds, Jose Aldo, it looks like he was winning the fight, but Holloway, stayed patient and kind of snapped out of it at the end of that second round, and then that third round, he he took it to him.
Yeah, I guess that was a part of the plan.
It seemed like it.
First two rounds, with Jose's history, he always seems to gas by the third round. So I looked at that as, okay, well, they got to have some type of game plan going on. And soon he came out in the third round, and you started to see him pick up. It was like, okay, yeah. And then after the fight, he kind of said something similar, not necessarily taking the rounds off, but he knew that he was going to pick up his motor in the third round, and it showed. It showed. He came out steaming in the third round, as more so than the first two rounds where he was kind of waiting and trying to counter. The third round looked just like the first round of the Pettis fight, where he just was coming for it.
Yes.
So, I expected everything that went down. So I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all, man. Congratulations to Holloway. Great showing. I'd like to see him put up the belt against Frankie Edgar. That would be pretty dope.
Yeah, I think that's what everybody's looking for. Yeah, Holloway said that that at the end of the second round, when he started taunting him and Aldo didn't really do anything, he knew that, like, all right, this is the time to really, put the jets on, man, turn it up a notch. That he really wasn't responding, so he's probably already gassing, so. So yeah, he was like, so that third round, he really, started taking it to him, man, and it's crazy that like in the MMA world, man, like I know, there's a lot of things you can say about Aldo, but you can't, knock his career, man. He had a hell of a career.
No.
And
the thing with Aldo now is, I'm not gonna say that he's his run was one of the greatest. He had a similar run like Fedor.
Right.
But what taints him is Conor McGregor. After that fight, he was never the same dude.
Yeah.
Never the same guy after that, and
That's like a traumatic
definitely,
loss, though, man. When you go in there and lose in 13 seconds to a knockout, man, that's a traumatic loss.
Yeah, he's still in denial now as far as saying that Big John stopped the fight too early. I mean, Big John did everything that he possibly could to allow you to, try to get away from those strikes that you were receiving.
Right, definitely.
I mean, I think Big John did a great job, and he gave you the champion. He gave the champion respect to Aldo. Aldo just didn't do. I mean, you can get thumbs up a zillion times, man, but a guy's not going to sit up here and allow you to keep getting punched in the head without you trying to change position.
Right.
So for Aldo to come out and say that, it just let me know, man, his brain, like he's going through it, man. I don't know if he didn't rewatch the fight, but I think it's kind of asinine for you to blame Big John on something that he gave you an opportunity to correct. So it is what it is, man, and that is the world of combat sports.
Right.
You win some, you lose some.
And I think with this Holloway win, it definitely brings a new energy to that division. Just because Conor was the champ, but he's walked away and doing whatever, and then they gave the belt back to Aldo, and so giving it to Holloway, who's 25 years old, kind of changes the guard, breathes a youthful life to that division. So and definitely everybody wants to see this match against Frankie Edgar, which probably be a hell of a fight.
What's crazy is I forgot that he fought Conor McGregor. I totally forgot that he fought Conor McGregor and lost to him in a 3-round fight.
Right.
I think this match would give Conor huge problems. I think he's definitely a different fighter, man. So, yeah, good for Holloway, man. It's unfortunate for Jose, man. What do you do now? Do you retire, go off to the sunset, or do you get back on your horse and you try to get your belt back? I think it makes no sense for him to go up to lightweight. As I see that, at least in my opinion, I think he'll get knocked out in the heavier weight classes.
Right.
So he got a lot of decisions that he needs to make real soon about what he wants to do.
Definitely. And kind of switching topics, but it's still in UFC, and we've talked about this a lot on this podcast, is with Demetrius Johnson, man. And he's finally coming out and saying the stuff that I know he's been wanting to say for a while now about the UFC and not getting his respect and not the promotion that he truly deserves, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, and he's a dude that, like, if you got something bad to say about Demetrius Johnson, then you don't know shit about MMA.
Right.
This guy is one of the good guys. I think. I mean, no diss to TJ Dillashaw. I like TJ Dillashaw. Hell, he likes a lot of our shit on Instagram. Me and yours.
Right.
No
right.
diss to him at all. But how does he get a title shot when A, you're not a current champion, B, you've never even had a flyweight match before?
Right.
How does how do you, it's almost like Dana is just doing, it's like he's doing a favor or he hooking his boy up or some shit like that. I don't mean hooking his boy up, but to me I understand him trying to make a fight, but to give title shots to people that, like, I was in total, I think we both were in total disagreement with the whole GSP thing going for middleweight. It made more sense for him to fight Teron Woodley. That was the belt that he retired. He left. He left the welterweight division. You don't come right back to fighting and get a title shot in a whole nother weight class. That makes no sense. So I just don't agree with what they doing to DJ, man. I mean, I know TJ trying to, TJ want to get a belt, good for him. And unfortunately, the shit with him and Cody, with the back injury that he's serving, going through right now, it fucked what he had going on, But for UFC to try to force Demetrius Johnson to take that fight instead of the Ray Borg fight, which he had already agreed upon, is just some bullshit. It just don't make it makes sense. No, it don't. It don't make no sense. It makes no sense at all. If TJ was a lightweight champion, I couldn't argue.
Right.
But currently he's not a champion. No. And you're just gonna allow him, a former champion, to, bypass all the contenders, just because you want to do this, and then, to tell him, okay, you'll get pay-per-view points, and to tell him, well, if you don't do this, then we'll shut your division down. I'm happy DJ came out and said, fuck it, do it, because there's principles here, man, and like it amazes me a dude that ain't never threw punches in his life is in control of all these fighters trying to be a bully. Right. Somebody is going, and I hate to even be like this, man, but somebody is going to fuck Dana White up. That's going to happen. Right. If he don't, like, you can't be talking slick to these dudes, and yeah, you're the boss, but it's similar to, I go back to, and I know I'm kind of going off subject a little bit, man, but he's been doing whole ass shit for years, man. You can go back to when he acquired Strikeforce. He was saying all type of slick shit on Twitter. Calling women names and saying this, that, and the other. So my boy said something. He want to terminate his contract. We talking about King Mo here, but he want to terminate his contract, man. But yet, he used his platform, the way he wants to. It's almost like do as I say and not as I do. Well, basically, and it's just not cool. It's not cool at all. It's not setting a good example, and he's gonna fire off on the wrong dude one day, and it's gonna be trouble. Right. Or he go fire off on the wrong woman. Yeah. He go fuck around and Cyborg might catch him. Right. Right. And of course you don't want to see none of that shit, man. But no. It just really makes you wonder, man. It's
he's poking a lot of the bears, man. He's poking the bear, man. Shoot, all the time.
It wouldn't be saying all this slick shit, man. So good for DJ coming up, standing up for himself, man. He's done what a lot of fighters are afraid to do. Speak his fucking mind. It's taking a moment, right? But he finally spoke his mind, and let's see how this plays out.
And shit, dude, if okay, let's say they just take away the flyweight division. Shit, I think Bellator would create a flyweight division. They would sign a gaggle of flyweight fighters just to have DJ in Bellator. Shit, fucking one championship would probably lay out the red carpet for DJ, man. You know what I'm saying?
Oh man, in a heartbeat. In a fucking heartbeat, man. And,
so he got options, man. He got options.
Yeah, he does. Well, depending on how many fights he still has up under his UFC contract, man. But I think they trying to dick him.
Yeah.
I really think they trying to dick him, and I also think they don't want him to break that record.
Nah.
But I do think it's asinine for TJ to call him scared. You know, TJ beat the dude twice that knocked you out.
Right.
Remember that? You know, Dotson knocked out TJ Dillashaw.
Yeah.
And DJ has beat him twice convincingly. So I don't think being scared has nothing to do with it. You got to go with what's right. You know, I could see you getting a shot if you came down one fight to, you know, if you fought once at flyweight and then get the title shot, I would be okay with that. But to not have any flyweight matches.
Yeah, can TJ even like make weight for a flyweight fight? Like, and if he wins, is he gonna stay at flyweight or go back up? You know, like there's all these these variables about all these unknowns about what, you know, if TJ Dillashaw can actually do this or if he will stay. You know, is he gonna hold up this division if in the chance he beats DJ? You know what I'm saying? There's all these variables that like really don't need to happen, you know?
Yeah, I'm with you, bro. Definitely with you.
It's crazy.
You know, I don't know where Dana's head be at, but sounds like he got personal relationships with some of these fighters, and sometimes that may lead to a decision a lot of people don't like.
Right.
You know, because I just don't understand how anybody thinks this TJ fight makes sense. It would make sense if it was Cody, because he's a champion.
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense that it's TJ, man. So, you know, like I said, let's see how this plays out. I'm still curious how the Angela chick still has a job, and she's 0-4 in her last 4 fights in the UFC. What's her name? Angela Big Mouth what?
Magana?
Yeah, her.
Right.
Yeah, man. That motherfucker. Boy, I tell you, boy. How does she still have a job? You know, it makes you wonder, man.
Right.
It makes you fucking wonder.
Makes you wonder, man. Shit.
Just make you wonder. So it's like, wow, how in the fuck does she have a job and dudes that go on 2-fight losing streaks lose their job?
Right.
You got dudes that go out winning and go to other promotions. She hasn't even won a UFC fight yet. Yeah, but yet she has a job. Like, it's a lot of shit that just don't make sense. That's why Bellator is looking better and better these days. I've been saying this shit for years.
Right.
You know, they eventually the tide is gonna change. You know, it's not good making a lot of enemies, man. You know, Dana's making a lot of enemies right now, and he feel like he can do certain things because he's the boss. And I got a feeling once the new owners, like, they don't have the connections that Dana has, so they letting Dana, you know, be Dana right now. But once they're comfortable enough to run day-to-day operations, like building relationships, I don't see his contract getting renewed. You know, UFC is real close to not being the number one promotion anymore.
Right.
You know, I mean, they still have the fighters, but eventually these fighters will get tired of the bullshit. And that's what happens. You get tired of the bullshit and, hey, I want to go somewhere else. So, you know, hey, just get your popcorn, you know, pay attention to what's going on, man. It's going to be, you know, this next year or so is going to be real interesting to see what type of moves will be made on a lot of sides, a lot of stages in MMA, whether it be ONE FC, Bellator, UFC, or any other promotion that's out there that's, you know, trying to make moves. But it ain't going to be all about UFC like it's been in the past.
Right. Gonna be some interesting times. All right, moving into the to the realms of the WWE. Our boy Samoa Joe won the Fatal Five
Yeah,
Way this past weekend at Extreme Rules. Yeah.
Joe has the best entrance music in the game right now. Y'all been saying that shit for a while. When I
Right.
hear his music, I feel like busting a 16 like all the time. Like,
Right, man.
you
Right.
know, I I would love to figure out who produced that track for him, man.
It was the guys that it's the guys that do all the WWE stuff, the CFO guys.
Oh, really? Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, whoever did that, you can tell they got a little flavor, man.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I like that shit, man. That shit is hard, man.
Yeah, on Jericho's podcast about a couple months ago, like they talked about the whole process of his entrance music. Basically, like in a nutshell, like he first had a different entrance music in NXT and everything. It was kind of funkier and everything, and he didn't really like that. Whatever. They basically just asked him for suggestions of stuff that he liked, and then they would base it off of that. So they did this. He gave some suggestions before. They came out with this funky thing. He didn't really like it, but he kept it for a while. But then he asked for another. He asked or whatever they wanted to do another one, and he basically was like, "I really like the Godzilla theme." So they kind of based it off the Godzilla theme.
Oh, and it sounds like that.
Yeah.
Because that's what I think about. I think about that. I think about Simon Says.
Yeah.
I think about, like, when I hear them horns, I be like, ooh, that sounds like some shit. Ooh. Yeah, that shit is hard, man. But yeah, Joe deserves it. I really hope that I hope that we'll see him get the strap.
Yeah.
I don't personally see it. Because they have so much money invested in Brock Lesnar, and even though he's a part-time champion or a part-time competitor, he's the Universal Champion. But I think putting the belt on Samoa Joe, it makes sense. It makes sense right now. It makes huge sense to why not put the strap on somebody that's full-time, you know.
Right.
It just has to be a different outcome, you know, than us not seeing fucking Brock Lesnar for months, and then all of a sudden he beats Samoa Joe defending his belt. That's some bullshit.
Man,
you know, wrestling fans don't like that. We don't like that shit, man. So
right, and that segment that segment Monday night with Paul Heyman was really dope, man.
That was wonderful.
That was that's like one of the best Samoa Joe performances, man. Like it was intense. You're like even the viewing audience almost took a crap in their pants, you know, when he got up to him close and started whispering in his ear what he's gonna do, you know, like holy shit.
Yeah, that was great.
That was fantastic.
That was super great. I like how he kept grabbing his face, like, look at me when I'm talking to you. This is going to hurt. Yes, yeah. What I'm going to do, I'm going to squeeze your neck, and I want you to tell him what this is going to feel like. And yeah, that was dope. That was dope. I fucks with Samoa Joe, man.
And it's crazy it's crazy that like one time, and even he thought so, that he was only going to kind of be in the WWE to be like in NXT to sort of help out like the up and coming guys coming through. Kind of be that that guy to bring that
liaison.
Yeah, to be that liaison, to be that sort of guy to keep attention on the NXT brand. He you know, they never gave him any indication for a while that he was ever going to be brought up to the main roster, you know. And I don't know, maybe they say that to everybody, but it's crazy, and us people who know about Samoa Joe through all the Ring of Honor and TNA years and everything know that this guy is a special talent, you know. And I'm glad that, you know, he's been able to you know, be on the main roster, and it's cool. And I think a lot of people maybe don't like this, but I kind of I like it when they go to the main roster and they're not like jammed down our throats, you know.
Yeah.
They're sort of given something, but it's still a slow burn. They did that with AJ Styles even, you know. They brought him up and it wasn't jammed down our throats. It was a slow burn. You know, he did the thing with the Miz, then he did the thing with Chris Jericho, and it's like a few other things, and then he was the champ, you know. Same thing with Samoa Joe. Like, they don't have him like just always everything that he does, that they have him do, is very poignant to the moment and to like his character. Yeah. There's really nothing, and I'm glad that they don't like it. There's not a lot like wasted with him, where he's just out there for no reason or whatnot. So I like when they do that. I like when they just let it be a slow burn.
Real shit. They kind of pumping the brakes on Finn Balor a little bit too, man. He's been suffering losses on TV like a lot lately. You know, so it's like, hey, okay, Finn was supposed to be, you know, the next until that injury derailed what they had planned for him. And will he get back on pace? You know, because they still are jamming certain people down our throats. But will he get back on pace? We don't know. You know, are we going to have to suffer for, you know, another Roman Reigns showing? Are we going to have to keep experiencing his corny lines of his yard and, you know, all this other bullshit that we really, it's like, man, come on, dude. And to be honest with you, his wrestling has improved this last year and a half, man. So I'm not shitting on Roman Reigns' ability.
No, it just says character and everything. Just like
it's just like again. He's like a fucking mosquito, like one of them irritating mosquitoes that just won't die.
But no, the thing was about that Fatal 5-Way is that I really thought out of everybody in that match, you know, Samoa Joe, you know, was being Samoa Joe. Bringing the intensity that he always does, but I thought, you know, when he that Finn Balor was really exciting in that match, much more. I enjoyed watching him more than the other guys. You know, he had some really great spots on there, and I don't know, maybe they're ramping. Maybe they don't know what to do with him right now. Maybe they're ramping him for kind of a heel turn. I don't know, man. We'll see.
How about the Demon versus Bray Wyatt?
And they teased it that 1 week. And I was like, yes, let's do this. Yes.
Could you imagine the Demon appearing at SummerSlam against Bray Wyatt? That would be so perfect.
If they just did all their weird, freaky promos together, like, each week until SummerSlam, dude, come on, man. That would be dope, man. Like, and they teased it that 1 week, man, at the end of Raw. And
you ain't seen it since.
And we're like, yes. Like, everybody was excited. We're like, yeah, that's what we want. Finn Balor, Bray Wyatt. Let's go.
Yeah, that would be super dope. The Hardys losing the WWE belts. The Raw belts.
Yeah. Dude.
What do you think about that on Sunday?
That was a fun match because I like the stipulation that you had to actually, like, both have to leave both the teammates have to leave the cage. Like, that there is no pinfall or submission, you know. I think cage matches should be that. Like, always.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to see a pinfall in a cage match. I don't want to see a submission in the cage match. Unless you're bloody and everything, like Austin or whatever back in the day. That was fine. But for the most part, like, if you're doing a cage match, man, I want to see you guys, like, try to hop the cage or something and do high spots and shit like that, you know? I don't want to see a pinfall or whatever. Like, so I enjoyed that, but it was a pretty fun match. We all knew Jeff Hardy was going to do a high spot, which he did.
Yeah, Jeff Hardy, a bad motherfucker, man.
Yeah, but we'll see what happens with that. It was a pretty fun match. Like, as a whole, like Extreme Rules wasn't like all that extreme, but I enjoyed it as a whole. I thought it was a pretty fun pay-per-view.
Except for one match. The most horrific match of the night was Bayley versus Alexa Bliss.
Like, okay, I love Alexa Bliss and everything, but that was a terrible.
That shit was horrible.
That was
Did you
terrible.
hear what Dave Meltzer said? Dave Meltzer said that shit should have been 5 minutes less. He had to suffer through that bullshit.
It was pretty terrible, man. It's just like,
oh my god.
Okay, on some real shit, like, okay, I love Alexa Bliss, you know that. King Mo loves Bayley. But, and you know what, right. I would have been fine if Bayley just snapped and took that kendo stick and beat up Alexa Bliss and won the belt. And I would have been fine with that just for logic reasons. But the fact that they still had Bayley be this whole goody whatever, and barely really do anything and barely get over on that match, it was like, oh my god, come on. Like, they were building it to like where she is probably, I'm like, okay, she'll probably snap or something or do something different, I don't know, but they just like totally dropped the ball on that. So
Bayley need to come out with some new colors. She need a whole new makeover.
Know what they should have did? Know what they should have did for the ramp up of that match? They should have brought Tommy Dreamer back and have him be his, like, her mentor or something.
Or something.
It should have been like Sandman or Tommy Dreamer or somebody who knows her way around a kendo stick and been her mentor, for that match, That would have been even better, but shit, man. But
that shit was horrible.
It was, man.
It was horrible, and I also was praying that Nia Jax became champion on Raw, and that didn't happen. Somehow, someway, that little girl just keep, she's somehow, she's like the champion that somehow gets away with it. I want to see her lose soon.
See, that was like the champion, like how the Miz would always do it, man. Be like the swarmy champion that always got away, with being the champion for so long.
With the Miz, when he wrestles, it's quality. It's fucking quality.
Which I'm glad he is the IC champ again, because that belt was being wasted on Dean Ambrose.
It was, man. It was. Yeah, Dean Ambrose, definitely, he's a transition champion, even when he was a WWE champion. To me, he never, it's cool he wind up having the strap, but, he doesn't make a good champion to me, man.
No.
I still think they wasted my boy Cesaro's talents, but at least he is getting a little push being the tag team champion. So I give him a little love on that.
Yeah, I enjoy the Cesaro and Sheamus tag team, man. I enjoy what they've been doing.
Me too. I enjoy both of them too, man. I've always been a Cesaro guy, and say what you want, Sheamus is a tough ass dude. So
yeah, I was never really a Sheamus fan, but I can dig him now, man. I like this tag team.
Me too,
it's
man.
It's a pretty fun tag team.
You said what?
It's a pretty fun tag team.
Yeah, they are. They definitely they're a fun tag team.
Right.
Yeah, we got the New Day back on SmackDown.
Okay, tonight the Fashion Files New Day segment was so hilarious.
Yeah, it was. That shit was funny.
That was fantastic, man. I enjoyed that so much, man. I was like,
Hey, you know who Mo says the realest dudes in the WWE are the Usos. I said, get the fuck out of here,
what?
man.
Okay, I officially think that Rampage knocked something loose in his head in that last fight. If he's saying that the Usos are the real, they're the corniest dudes, man. Like,
oh my god, man.
The Uso Penitentiary.
Yeah,
I'm gonna take you to the Uso. Welcome to the Uso Penitentiary. What the?
Oh my god.
Like
the Uso Penitentiary, man.
Like they made a joke tonight. Like, Big E, is that your name or your bra size? I'm like, what? Who writes this crap?
I ain't gonna front though. When they went down to Elijah's footwear, and they said, "What are those?" I did laugh. My son did that shit to me one time. I had to check him.
Right.
Like, what you mean? I'm like, hey, get some game about yourself, son. that was funny because this shit. He did have the Iron Sheiks on. That definitely was funny. Yeah, well, every time I see the Usos, it's like I gotta turn the TV off before I look away. See, had they just, I used to be hard on them, so tough on them about changing their appearance.
Right.
Okay, they changed their fucking appearance. Had they just shut the fuck up and not open their mouths and just was that tag team that was just, like, wow, okay, yeah, they've changed. But then they start talking again.
Right, man.
And it's like, ooh, dude, it's brutal, man. And one of the dude's wife is champion.
Yeah.
And seeing her mic skills today was just brutal. Like, husband and wife need to go home and work on their mic skills because, when she came in the ring and said, I'm not in that match, but it's going to be lit. I said, oh, my God, lit. The fuck? Fans just looking in disarray like
what?
It's going to be lit. What did she say? Lit, hit, shit?
What?
Lip. Oh.
What's that?
Yeah.
Right.
It's gonna be lit. Yeah, they're horrible. So now I'm hoping that they hurry up, get the dirt off her, put it on the right waist, which is Charlotte. I don't think I can handle what's the chick name who do the horrible moonwalk? What's her name?
Oh, Carmella.
Oh man, she's horrible. She's horrible. I wouldn't mind Jimmy Snuka's daughter getting a little love just for nostalgia reasons.
Right.
Becky. I'm
love
tired
Becky.
of her.
You tired of her? I love Becky.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think her skill set is nice, but she, like, whenever she talks, it's like,
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Let's see, who's always Natalia. She's, for her to comment, about Ric Flair's daughter, and yet you're stealing the best there is, the best there. No, you're not. You should never say that ever.
And she comes out to Bret Hart's music, and it's everything else is like, she just took everything from Bret Hart,
You wear his colors.
His music.
It's like, man, come the fuck on. And I mean, yeah, you're the niece. You're Jim Neidhart's daughter. Jim Neidhart wasn't the guy. I mean, don't get me wrong, tag team wise, the Anvil, much respect, man, but Bret Hart was the guy, Jim went along for the ride. No diss, but it's just the truth. You go take the best there is. No, that's not what you do. That's not who you are. Be you.
Right.
Sad but true. Sad but true.
Yeah. Well,
Mm-hmm.
that's about it for this week's podcast. V-Styles, tell them where they can find you online.
You can hit me up at VStyles /Twitter /VSTYLEZ. Also on Instagram and Facebook /VSTYLEZ. You can hit me up on my official Facebook page at Official V-Styles. You'll see a little blue check by my name. That's my real page. You give me a hit, you know, let's chop it up. Let's be respectful, have a little fun on social media.
Word up, man. Thanks for listening. See you next week.
Peace.
Fresh is the word.